7. Barrett outside, the switch. Doncic goes, oh, what a great step! And then he hammers it home! Broke his ankles!
Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. I hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to episode 2 when it comes to the 2022 NBA draft process series for the New York Knicks and who we should take with that 11th overall pick. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Dyson Daniels, the shooting guard / small forward from Australia, but he also played for G League Ignite this past season, and he had the pleasure of playing with former NBA players such as an Amir Johnson, CJ Miles, and Acosta Koufos, which he's definitely ahead of the curve here when it comes to maturity-wise, experience-wise, playing up against professionals compared to these other college players. So it's a great way to mature your game and learn a lot from former NBA veterans, and just there's a harder playbook as well, so you're going to get used to physicality and how coaches coach you up as well, because some guys getting an opportunity as NBA head coaches were former G League head coaches as well. Nick Nurse, for example, he was actually a head coach when it came to the G League, but Dyson Daniels is a very intriguing prospect. I don't think he's just going to be a shooting guard / small forward. I do think he has potential to run the point. We're going to get into why, but if you're looking for a prospect that's going to be a perfect fit alongside RJ Barrett, even though I do think there's going to have to be a certain personnel in the lineup we're going to get into. Dyson Daniels from Australia, he's 6'6", 200 pounds, but he did say he grew 2 inches, so apparently he's 6'8" now when he had that interview with Mike Schmitz, but a very intriguing prospect, and he's going to be drafted around that 8 and 14 range, and if we do draft him, he ends up playing some point. I know certain guys that are like, no, I don't want Dyson Daniels because he can maybe be a point guard because of something very valuable he brings to the table. But we could like quickly all we want. Like, most likely he may project as a shooting guard / small forward, but there's a huge thing he has to work on. But we could love quickly all we want, but at the end of the day, we don't know the lens Leon Rose is looking through in the overall organization. So let's get into Dyson Daniels. And my favorite thing about Dyson Daniels, it has to be his playmaking, his overall vision. So he's 19 years old, but his vision is beyond his years. His playmaking, the things he sees on the court are just absolutely beyond his years. He's definitely someone that loves to push the pace. He grabs a rebound. He always keeps his head up when it comes to distributing the basketball. His outlet passes, getting out in transition, beautiful execution when it comes to touch on the passes, just enough power behind them. He definitely thrives when it comes to transition, snagging a rebound, keeping his head up, and even in the half-court setting, he keeps his head up. And who's someone that loves to run in our offense? He loved to run since Duke. He loved to run since his high school days. The Canadian, RJ Barrett. He would be an absolute beast with RJ Barrett, especially because their offense is very bland, so sometimes it's very predictable. He kind of brings that unpredictability when it comes to the offense of just keeping his head up and constantly just you never know what Dyson Daniels is going to do with the basketball. And he's very patient in the half-court setting. He does a good job waiting for the screens. He doesn't leave too early. Obviously, that could end up being an offensive foul, but very good vision, recognizes when guys cut back door, does a great job dribble penetrating, kicking out, he plays at an interesting pace too. He plays at the right pace, if you know what I mean, but it's very interesting and unorthodox the way he runs the show when he is that top playmaker and when he has the ball in his hands, but he just does the right thing when it comes to distributing the basketball sometimes, or keeping his head up and reading the floor. Sometimes you could say he picks up his dribble a little too early, and sometimes he can get in trouble with that, but brilliant vision. He could just set up guys easier in the offense. How many times have we seen Burks at point guard, or whoever it is at point guard, even if we like Quickly? Sometimes Quickly doesn't always make the right read. We kind of have to simplify the offense for him, or obviously we have a very limited playbook. He can make the basic reads, but there's been so many times the offense becomes so stagnant because we don't have guys that can consistently make the right read and just make the right pass. I guess Dyson Daniels, what makes him so special is that he could fit any pass into any tight window, those whip passes, just the effortlessness behind his passes. You could definitely see that there, but sometimes he's so confident passing the basketball. I don't even think it's that big of a deal, because we see some of the best passers in the league do this. If it's a Luka Doncic, Alonzo Ball, LeBron James, because they're so confident into passing the ball into any tight window, he can be a little too confident and force it, and it ends up resulting in a turnover. I don't have a big problem with that unless it happens at the end of games and it forces the outcome or affects the outcome of the game, because it's a very fast game. You're going to make mistakes. It's just about having that short-term memory. But Dyson Daniels, I really love what he brings to the table when it comes to playmaking-wise. He's just a beast in the pick and roll, throwing it ahead, he plays at the right pace, and he'll definitely set the tone very nicely when it comes to playing unselfish basketball for your ball club and just setting up easier shots for an RJ Barrett so he's not completely taken out of the offense. But he always finds the best quality shot for his teammates, which I love. His teammates absolutely love playing for him. He sacrificed kind of a role scoring the ball because of Jaden Hardy, who was a high volume guy for the G League Ignite squad. He played with a lot of loaded talent. Alright, now getting into his overall jump shot and his mechanics. Obviously, he was not a great shooter of the basketball, only shooting it at a 25.5% clip from downtown on 3.6 attempts. I guess the positive is that he isn't like Ben Simmons or anything like that. Like, he's not afraid to shoot the basketball. Even though he's struggling, he'll shoot it if it's open. And even when it's contested, he won't be afraid to shoot it. But there is kind of a scare there. How good of a touch does he have to become a potential good shooter down the road? When you take a look at Dyson Daniels, he only went on to shoot 73.7% from the free throw line, but he only got there 1.4 times a game. But I do believe there is some touch there because he is the floater, because he is the hook shot in his game, and there's a pretty solid fluidity when it comes to hitting those shots around the rim. He can't create and hit shots from beyond the arc. He's not even a consistent catch and shoot 3-point shooter. You could say he dips the ball too much. It's kind of a set shot a little bit. It's not the fastest. I'm not going to say it's extremely slow, but I'm not going to say it's extremely fast. It's not an ugly looking shot. There's something to work with there, but his mechanics aren't the greatest. They're not the quickest. I'm not like Josh Giddey. It's kind of Josh Giddey-esque. I think it's smoother, but hopefully the positive with Dyson Daniels, kind of Giddey-like, even though I think Giddey is a generational passer. Daniels is a good passer. I don't think he's generational like Giddey. That he's so good at everything else that it kind of ignores his deficiencies from downtown, and he could still put such a huge stamp and impact on the game. But he's a hard worker. I really believe he's going to continue to get better at his craft, shooting it from the outside. He's 19 years old, and we'll see what goes on to happen with his jump shot. That definitely is the Achilles heel to his game, his shot. Now getting into his defense, I really believe there's a high upside to his defense. He averaged 2 steals per game, and he has a solid frame. I do think he has to get a little bit stronger, standing at 6'6", 6'8". You could say whatever height he is, he's between that. He said he grew. You could say he didn't grow. I really believe he's like 6'7", but he's 200 pounds. He's a 6'10" wingspan. He's already a very solid defender, but I think he has the ability to be a very good defender when it comes to his footwork and also just his physical profile. His footwork's just very good when it comes to the defense side of the basketball. He's constantly moving his feet, and he also knows when to play straight hands up fundamental defense. After G League Ignite, plays very good defense an entire possession. He doesn't bail him out with some stupid foul, but he's a very good individual on-ball defender or one-on-one defender, so he doesn't really struggle against that much personnel. Maybe the very twitchy guys, but he moves his feet very well, so he actually does a very solid job against those guys. Sometimes he could fall asleep off the ball, but sometimes he could be a little too aggressive, but I don't have a problem with that. I know they call it a tighter game, at least in the regular season, or you could say even in the playoffs. Sometimes, or most of the time as well, it's definitely a different game than it used to be, but I don't have a problem with the aggressiveness. He's just willing to compete on that side of the ball. Solid fundamentals, solid wingspan, 6'10", and I love his aggressiveness on that side of the ball. Tom Thibodeau preaches defense, and he just preaches just always working your ass off on that side of the ball. So I definitely like what he brings to that department. Reads the passing lanes very well to get out and transition because he's a solid athlete. And that department, like getting into his athleticism, I do think he's a good athlete. He's not some explosive athlete like a Jaylen Brown or a Jalen Green. You know, it's a coincidence I just said both Jalen's there, obviously spelled differently. He has a good vertical, and he's a good athlete, especially in the open floor when he comes up with a steal in the passing lane or you throw it ahead to him and he may be down on the other side. He could definitely throw it down with some authority, and if he finds a crease in the defense in the half-court setting, he could also throw it down, and he's not afraid to attempt posters, but it seems like when the defense is ready for it and they're collapsing the paint and like forcing him to shoot the 3-ball, because defenses are going to be played a lot differently versus the New York Knicks. If he struggles to shoot that 3-ball, you know, and he continues to prove that he has work to do in that department, there may be an Achilles heel, and we already know how bland our offense is already, so that may be a concern. But yeah, when there's a crease in the defense, he could throw it down, but when the defense is ready for him, he doesn't have crazy high elevation in the half-court setting when attacking the rim, but I really do like his deep bag of moves when it comes to offense. He plays at a very solid pace. He has a solid handle. I'm not going to say it's great on a string. It doesn't mean he's not able to get to his shots. Like, he has very good footwork, and he has an unorthodox style of play, but he makes it work and still finds a way to create separation. He has go-to moves such as, like, he has this move that he dribble penetrates, he spins, throws up a baby hook. He has nice floaters in the lane. He knows when to attack aggressively. Just a pure layup. He does a good job using the backboard for his protection. Does a good job protecting the ball. Sometimes he can get blocked because sometimes he may just be too fundamental and he may need to add a little more flair or protect the ball better at times when going to the basket. But he plays a lot stronger than a guy that's 6'8", 200 pounds. It's not crazy skinny, but there's an aggressiveness there and there's a willingness to get to the basket. But you could say he needs to get better drawing fouls, only getting there one time a game. But the dream scenario for Daniels, because he's not a great shooter of the basketball, at least for the future, we'll see if Tom Thibodeau is here, is I would start quickly RJ and Daniels all together. I actually think they would complement each other very well, especially because there's still an inconsistency right now with RJ and Daniels shooting the ball, so quickly can kind of take the pressure off of them of how the defense is going to react to them. I know Quickly's still kind of an inconsistent shooter of the basketball, but I think he's going to continue to get better, and there's that threat because he's solid at drawing fouls. He can knock it down from free throw territory. It's just a great sign that he's going to continue to get better as a shooter because he's such a great free throw shooter, and it's all about repetition. He continues to work on these deep shots, and his three-point percentage doesn't really indicate how he's as a shooter. Sometimes he can miss open looks, but he's not afraid to take those really deep shots, and I don't personally think it's a bad shot because he always works on those shots. But Dyson Daniels, I really do like his dexterity around the rim. I really do like his body control. He's really under control, just knocking defenders off their spots or really catching the defense on their heels and just making them feel lost on the defense side of the basketball. So I think a perfect way to describe Dyson Daniels' game is high basketball IQ. He's not extremely flashy or anything like that, but he's always ahead of the curve, whatever the phrase is, when it comes to these other prospects, when it comes to basketball IQ wise. And if you want RJ to be set up in the position to be successful, if Obi starts down the line, I think Dyson Daniels is really that guy. He can make the basic reads, but he can also just make tremendous reads out there on the court. Very high IQ individual, very humble. He knows he has to get better, and he wants to correct those mistakes. But thriving in transition, thriving in the half-court setting, distributing the basketball, and he's even aggressive on the boards. He has a willingness. He has a good nose for the ball, 5.9 rebounds per game, and I really think he's going to be a quality player, even if his shot doesn't develop. But if his shot develops, even if he gets to like 36%, that's big time for him to just get the defense to collapse outside on the perimeter and open up things even more for the offense. But I really think he could play the 1 through 3 at the next level. I do think he could project as a 1 because the outside shot, but the range I think he's going in the draft, he can go from like 8 to 14. He can go to the Wizards at 10. You could say they don't really have a direction, so are they going to draft for now or moving forward? Will they trade the pick? But some teams may be scared away with his jump shot, but I think he makes up for, again, not having crazy explosiveness, not having this great jump shot with his basketball IQ, but you do need a shot at the end of the day, even if it's not from the outside, if it's from mid-range territory. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Andre Miller, but he's a balanced player. But again, the shot is a huge concern, and we would definitely have to add another shooter in the lineup to take pressure off of RJ and Daniels because they're still he still needs to create. He can create getting to the rack and just hitting these off balance like floaters and all that. But he needs a jumper from the outside, as his numbers he actually finished with here. When it came to the G League Ignite program, 31 minutes per game, he averaged 11.3 points per game, 44.9% from the field, 25.5% from downtown, not a great sign. On 3.6 attempts, 73.7% from the free throw line, on 1.4 attempts per game, 5.9 rebounds, 4.4 assists per game, 2.4 turnovers, 1.9 steals, at 0.8 blocks per game. And yeah, he just has good length. He's willing to get better. Again, a high character individual that makes everyone around him better. Unselfish, sometimes you could say he's a little too unselfish. You would like to see him look for a shot more. He went up against pros, and he's going to continue to get better. We'll see what situation he goes in. If it's with the New York Knicks, if he falls there, I would not be mad because I think it would be a great fit alongside RJ. But you definitely need an ideal shooter if you put Daniels up at the 2. Whatever you're a fan of position RJ Barrett's going to end up playing. But very interesting feature when it comes to Dyson Daniels, the Australian product. Played for G League Ignite. Let me know down below your thoughts. Peace out, yo.